Hey y'all, hopping on live on Instagram Live, which I have not done in a minute, but wanted to come on and say hi to folks. I'll also be posting this on YouTube later. And today I want to talk about timelines. I've been doing a lot of traveling this year and doing some international traveling, and been splitting half of my time in the US and the other half I've been doing international travel, because one thing that I do as a healer and just really as an activator at this time is I connect with the land. I connect with the land more than I connect with people. I connect with the natural world. I listen to the land. I listen to the stories of what the land has to share. And I spend a great amount of time alchemizing different trauma timelines located within the land. And I see myself as the biggest grid system, and I'm the microcosm, and then the earth is the macrocosm. And what do I mean when I say this? So if you think about your body itself is a map. Okay, so we have all of our body parts tell a specific story. We have so many different meridian channels, so many different energy centers, and sometimes trauma can get stuck within the ley lines of our body. And our body's ley lines could be considered different, like meridian points in our body. And sometimes we need to learn where those stuck energy points are, and then we need to work on healing or releasing stuck or stagnant energy. The same thing happens in the land. So if we think about all the different wars, all the different trauma stuff, a lot of the stuff that we see sometimes in the news as it relates to stuff that's going on, the earth itself, or Terra, another word for earth is Terra. Terra herself is also feeling a lot of that energy as well. And a lot of traumatic timelines are stuck within the land. And what's happening right now is the earth is going through a mass awakening, just like we're waking up, okay? And we're working on getting out of a lot of the constructs and the confines of the false matrix simulation, which is just basically like everybody needs to stay in their box. Everybody kind of needs to fall in line, follow their script. A lot of us are getting tired of that. We're ready to expand a lot more. The earth is also going through her own expansion journey as well, and going through a process of soul retrieval. So clearing a lot of the stuckness, the density, a lot of the trauma timelines. It's feeling really heavy in the earth's body right now, and it's not comfortable. All right. So a couple things can happen with that. One of those things is different natural disasters can happen. All right. The energy needs to move somehow. Okay, it's kind of like if you think about sometimes when you're stuck in a really traumatic situation, and maybe you're in a toxic sort of relationship or a toxic work environment or something, right? But you know that something needs to change, but you keep doing the same thing because you're like, I'm too afraid to make the change. Like, I know a change needs to happen, but I'm too afraid to make the change, so I'm just not going to do it. So what happens a lot of times when this occurs? You will end up, sometimes that situation will end up blowing up in your face. And the reason why that situation can blow up in your face is because it's like, you know what? You have to get out of this toxic relationship or this toxic situation one way or another. And because it took you a while to actually get out of the toxic situation yourself, sometimes a weird, chaotic situation will happen to force you out of that toxic situation. And I think we've all been through different traumatic situations where it's like, dang, that was a really traumatic situation that I went through, but I'm so happy that it happened because I learned this, or I was able to have this opportunity, okay? So when we think about like natural disasters or different stuff that's going on in the earth that makes things really topsy-turvy, yes, Kim Rain 222, it's the same thing, right? Like the energy is going to get released somehow, okay? And even though it might seem like a tragedy for humanity, okay, the earth can't hold on to all of the pain and the burdens of humanity anymore. The earth, just like we are waking up and we're done with the energy harvesting, we're done being used, there's a lot of like this divine feminine energy that's coming online. And the feminine is reclaiming and staying within her power in a lot of ways, okay? And she's just like, you know what? Enough's enough. Well, the earth is doing the same thing too. She's like, I'm not holding on to y'all's traumas, y'all's war timelines and all this stuff. I'm going to mess some stuff up in the meantime, okay? I need to shake some stuff up. I need to get rid of this energy. I need to stretch. And so sometimes that might happen in certain ways, like earthquakes or volcanic eruptions or tsunamis or that sort of thing, okay? But one thing that we can do that's really humanitarian but also is helpful for the planet as a whole is we can really go back in our own timelines and look at where we've experienced trauma or we've caused trauma to the collective. So we like to point the finger at people being oppressive, okay? I know things the energy is really heavy and palpable, okay? So I have not been in the U.S. the whole time. I've been going in and I've been coming back out. I've been going in, I've been going back out. So I feel like this has given me a certain level of perspective that for folks who are in the U.S. consistently maybe don't see. But I've also not just been away from the U.S. also, okay? I have a lot of business to tend to here, and I have a lot of ties here to the U.S., both ancestrally and also just with the lands and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not somebody, even though sometimes I need to go away or I need to go do other things or do traveling, I always come back because I belong here, and I think that there's this narrative happening right now where a lot of people are getting afraid of what's going on, I guess politically or just with the energies. And a lot of people are like making their exit. Like I'm seeing a lot of stories like on my YouTube feed around people like, okay, this is how you leave the US, this is how you exit, and it's like run away before the big calamity happens, okay? And I'm not here to tell anybody what to do as it relates to that, because hey, I'm doing my own thing. I'm moving in, I'm moving out, I'm moving in, I'm moving out. I've crafted a lifestyle to where I can do that and I can do that comfortably, and it's a blessing. But what I will say is that there's a lot of powerful people incarnated in the US at this time. There's a reason why I can travel anywhere around the world and people want to know what's going on in the US, I can try to get away from the politics, and I'm not a political person, by the way, okay? That's not a part of my reality anymore, okay? I used to be very political, but I don't really do the politics like that. But I can go to many places in the world and people want to know about what's going on in US politics and they want my opinion on it, okay? So there's a very powerful vibration as it relates to the United States. And I'm titling this talk that I'm doing, What Timeline Are You In? Okay? Because time is an illusion, all right? The only time is now. But what can happen is that we can be steered into different timelines depending upon the certain media that we're taking in, depending upon a lot of like artificial intelligence can make it so that we perceive time in a certain way. And I want to talk about how to get out of the timelines imposed by others so that you can steer time for yourself. Because time has been utilized as a weapon within the false matrix simulation. And I have to say that I specifically see it in the US, like that the way that the grid system of the false matrix is set up is extremely aggressive and has some really aggressive timelines, specifically in the United States. That's something that I'm noticing. And I don't even know who this message is for. A lot of people might be like, what is she talking about? And that's okay. But this message is for folks who know. If you know, you know, or if you're curious, you'll learn a little bit more. Okay, so let's talk about this. Timelines. Okay, so what is a timeline? So if time is an illusion, then aren't timelines illusions as well? So let's think about a line, right? A line, it's like a start to finish. Okay, it's a very direct, it's a specific direction. When you follow a line, you can only go one way. Think about when you were in school as a child, right? And you would color in the lines. You can't color outside the line. I mean, you can, but your art isn't considered as valuable, or you're not considered as great of a drawer if you color inside the lines, or, you know, you're not as artistic, I guess, right? Even though we know that art itself is way more than being able to color within the lines. Some of the greatest artists of our time had created abstract art, and there were no lines within their art, right? But that didn't make their art any less valuable. In a lot of ways, it made it more creative and more powerful. Okay, so follow me here. There's a geometry of time that we also want to think about. Okay, so the only time is now. So that means time is not within a line. It's actually more of a spiral. Okay, there's no true beginning, there's no true end. Okay, and sometimes you can see that time is cyclical. Okay, sometimes, and we notice that with cycles of time. We notice that a lot of times with fashion too, right? So like fashion will bring back a certain era, right? So sometimes that's like the 1950s or the 1970s. I got my I don't know, like my little Brady Bunch, Scooby-Doo, Velma shirt on right now, okay? So I'm in like a little 70s vibe or whatever. But all that to say, time is relative and it's an illusion, but it can be manipulated, okay? So the key to mastering time is to always follow the way of the spiral. If you're following time within a line, that there's a beginning and that there's an end, your time or your perception of time is being manipulated. And it's really easy to put you in a particular box of what you should be doing, right? Because a lot of times we're taught, okay, if you're not doing this, if you don't have this by a certain age, then you've somehow failed, okay? If you haven't reached this accomplishment by age whatever, you know, and this is kind of like that corporate ladder that we're taught. That's another form of timeline, okay? But a lot of us are breaking out of these forms of illusion. We're realizing that we can't be steered in a particular direction or coerced in a particular direction and align with our innermost selves or what our hearts actually want. That the way that we might be meant to travel in this lifetime might be more of a spiral, might be more cyclical. All right, it might be non-linear. There is an art to non-linear living. Okay, sometimes you can't rush the process. Sometimes you can't predict the process. However, in the false matrix simulation, you are very much expected to be predictable. The more predictable you are, the more profitable you are to the controllers of the false matrix. Because if they can predict what you do, how you buy, right, the things that you want at the times that you want, then they're able to market certain items to you, okay? So it's within their best interest for you to be as predictable as possible and to follow a certain timeline so they can extract as much wealth and resources from you as possible, okay? Now, just like time is an illusion and timelines are an illusion, if we think about the land, okay, if we think about the land, there is something called a planetary grid system. It can show up sometimes like a web, okay, it can show up sometimes like a web of life. There is an artificial grid system within the land, though, as well. And that artificial grid system is going to show up in horizontal and vertical lines. Angular sort of geometry. But the natural grid system of the earth is more of a spiral. It's more of rounded edges, okay? And the reason why geometry matters when we think about time and also when we think about the gridding of the planet is because the more angles that there are within the way we see our reality or the way we're positioned on the earth, then the more energy harvesting can happen. And actually it's very violent for the planet. A lot of angles, a lot of sharp edges. It's you know, just like you don't want to bump up against a sharp edge like in real time, right? It's the same thing for the planet. If everything is planned based upon angles and squares and triangles, that sort of thing, it's a very harsh kind of reality. And each, you know, okay, so I want to talk about how a lot of people they're talking about wanting to leave the United States. Okay, I'm hearing that a lot. At least in my algorithm, I see that a lot. and I don't want to leave the United States. Like my ancestors were here, okay? And this is going into also indigenous land rights, okay? I have been classified as an African American, and I thought I was an African American for a really long time, but I'm learning a lot about my history, and I'm also realizing that a lot of my ancestors who I thought were from Africa, they may have spent some time in Africa, but they were actually indigenous to America. Like they didn't come from Africa and set up shop here through slavery. No, they were here and then they were reclassified as African to take the land away from them. Okay. I also have the traditional Native American blood running in my DNA too. Okay. My grandmother grew up on a reservation, so I have that lineage as well. Okay. A lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, wait, why are you trying to co-opt to the Native American sort of reality? Like, it's not doing that. But it is to say, like, there is a story that's really incomplete here. Okay. So a lot of the people that I'm seeing in my algorithm right now, yes, Kim Rain. Okay. A lot of the people I'm seeing in my algorithm right now, they are classified as African American and they are wanting to get out of the United States, like, quickly. And I get it. Trust, been there. Okay. And I'm not to say, like, I'm not here to say don't leave the United States. Okay. I'm here to say, know what your birthright is. And if you leave to strengthen yourself. Okay. Leave to relax, leave to enjoy life for a bit, but don't forget about your birthright, because that's actually in the land. And there might be a psyop going on right now and timelines being manipulated. Okay, so we're seeing different policies coming up and they're seeming like we're going back in time in a weird way. It's fascinating to me. But it also might be to make people really uncomfortable so that they want to leave land that they might be indigenous to. Okay, because it's like, and I actually had to learn this leaving the United States. Okay, and then I had ancestors. I had to see things. I actually went to Africa. I spent some months in Africa. Beautiful time there. But I had to go to Africa to, like, really hear what my ancestors were trying to download to me about the stories of being indigenous to the lands in the United States. And I was able to go to the continent. And I'm not saying that my ancestors aren't from Africa or haven't spent time in Africa, but a lot of them are indigenous to the Americas. Okay. And a lot of y'all, if you identify as being African American, just think about it. I'm not saying that you're not from Africa, and I'm not saying that Africa's bad. There's a lot of beauty there. Been to a lot of countries in Africa, loved it. But are you being pushed out of your country? Like, not just like your family grew up there, like your mom, your dad, your grandmother, your grandfather, but like literally maybe your bloodline is indigenous to this land, and maybe there is a timeline that's being pushed for you to be so uncomfortable in the land that you are indigenous to that you leave it and that you never want to go back to it, and that you forsake the birthright of your land. There's something bigger going on here, y'all. There's something bigger going on here. Okay. So anyway, that being said, coming back to the United States, I was chilling. I was just in South America. Beautiful. Oh, the land is so lush and beautiful there, y'all. Like, that's another thing. If you are trying to leave the United States, okay, but maybe try going into the Americas. Like, there's so much abundant land there. There's so much great culture there. And a lot of our people, they were nomads and they traveled. They didn't just stay in one particular landmass. Like, they went from North America to South America, or they went from South America to Central, et cetera, okay? And a lot of this stuff has been documented. So definitely verify what I'm saying. Don't just take my word for it. Treat it with curiosity and maybe consider, like, learning more about what I'm talking about, and make the decision for yourself. But there's also places in the Americas where you can really connect with your ancestors and maybe take a break from a lot of the drama and trauma timelines that are popping off in the US, because I will say that they're messing around a lot with the timelines here and the grid systems here. There's a lot of grid systems that are set up in the United States to make it as uncomfortable for folks as possible. And it's almost like a war. It's like a warring type energy. There's a warring type energy in a lot of the major cities right now. And it's not warfare. You know, the US is really interesting. We haven't had to experience physical warfare on US soil for quite some time, even though the US has been caught up in a lot of wars. But there has been a great deal of like psychological warfare that Americans have had to go through, and that's intensifying too. And it's this concept of you need to pay to live, you need to pay to exist. And that's not to say you don't need money wherever else you go, but it's different. It's very different. How is it that you can go to other countries where people don't earn as much, nearly as much as folks in the US does, but they're able to live comfortably? It's not like you need to pay to exist in that sort of way. There's a certain way that the culture or that the grid system, this is a grid system thing. I want y'all to think more about the geometry of the land that you're living on, okay? And the grids, the things that have been put in place, the artificial software, the artificial timeline technology that has been put in place to make you either feel really comfortable in a particular area or really uncomfortable in a particular area. I know I'm asking a lot, this is like a really weird way of looking at your reality, but it's going to be really beneficial for us to start looking more at the way timelines are being manipulated in the times to come. We give so much of our energy to our technology, to our phones, to our tablets, all that sort of stuff, to the apps that we're on, that it is shaping and bending our reality. And a lot of times it's funneling us into different timelines, okay? Your search engine, what you decide to search on a particular day, maybe if you're feeling a little depressed even, let's say you're feeling depressed and you start searching certain things around depression, or maybe you're worried about money, right? And you start searching certain things related to that. It's going to put you and funnel you. The algorithm is going to arrange itself to put you more into that reality. So even making sure that you're clearing your search queue quite often, right? That you're really being mindful about what you're ingesting, because everything holds a memory, right? In the metaverse, okay? And it's going to start feeding you a certain timeline, okay? So we want to really start looking at this as being an illusion, because it is. Okay, we really do, because if we don't, what's going to happen is we might just get funneled into certain boxes through AI, through the, different social media and that sort of thing, and we might not really know, okay? And this is going to put us in a very particular life trajectory. Now, there's an added element to what's happening on the land that we're on, though, too, okay? So I would say the United States is ground zero for a lot of things. So I know that it can feel really hard and really disheartening sometimes, especially for folks who are really social justice minded or who really want to build unity consciousness. And we're seeing a lot of division happening within this particular country. The best thing that we can do is not go marching out in the streets or anything like that. It's really about being mindful about the reality that we're choosing to feed into, the timelines that we're choosing to feed into, and knowing that a lot of the timelines that we're given sometimes are artificial. Sometimes it's beneficial for the controllers of the false matrix simulation to get us in a really low vibrational state, to get us really worried, to get us really anxious. I did a short on this recently about this concept called looshing. Okay, looshing is basically where you extract, it's an energy harvesting technique that's you'll see it every day. It's what the news is run on. It's what a lot of our media is run on. You get people to get in a lower vibrational state, fear, hatred, anger, division, etc. And it's actually an emotional feeding source, okay? So there are beings, very vampiric beings, who latch on to low vibrational energy and basically feed off of that. They can't feed off of high vibrations. They they like feeding off of people who are high vibrational and getting them into a lower vibrational frequency. That tastes better to them. I know that sounds really weird, but look, this is how they think. And so the lower in frequency they can get you, the more worried they can get you, then the more they can harvest off of you. And a lot of times this can also depict how your buying and your spending patterns are. If you start buying and spending through fear and through anxiety, that's a greater feeding source, okay? So these are just some things to think about. So I want to just quickly share how you know if you're in an artificial timeline, okay? So I'm gonna give you a couple of ways to know. If you feel stuck, if you feel like you have no way out of your situation, best believe you are in an artificial timeline, okay? That is not a real thing. You are a multidimensional being, and you can get out of whatever situation that you're in through your intention. I know that it doesn't seem like that, but it's true. And I want to share a little bit more about the architecture of the false matrix simulation and why you might be feeling as though you're stuck. There are something called frequency fences. So in the etheric realms are things that we can't see, taste, touch, or feel unless you have unless your inner eye is open, unless your pineal gland is open. And there's been a lot of manipulations to our inner eye, because if we only believe in the illusion of the false matrix simulation, we're a lot easier to control. A long time ago, humanity used to be able to manifest a lot easier through their intention, okay? They used to be able to say things and then it happens. Some people they're noticing that they can do that now. They're noticing that as they tap in more, that they can focus on something that they desire and then it manifests and materialize. That they can speak what they want into existence and then it can manifest and materialize. So those energies are coming back online now. But a lot has been done to manipulate our third eye to keep us out of alignment with being creators of our reality. So if you're feeling stuck and like there's no way out, and trust me, I have been there before. I only speak on things that I know and that I've had to navigate, okay? But there are ways that you can focus your intention to get out of an artificial timeline, and know that sometimes you are in a frequency fence where basically, we're supposed to be able to have a very expanded consciousness or vibration. What can happen sometimes in the false matrix is when you start expanding your frequency and start expanding your consciousness, it sends off like an alarm bell within the false matrix, right? And it's, a lot of this is run through AI. And I'm not saying AI is bad or whatever. I think there's ways that we can utilize it, but we just need to know how it works. We need to know about the dark web of the false, just how like the internet has a dark web. How many people actually go to the dark web? Not many, right? Because that's kind of where a lot of the shady dealings go down, right? But it's a huge part of our internet. This is the dark web of consciousness, human consciousness, okay? There are these things called frequency fences. If you start expanding too much, all right, or thinking too much of yourself, sometimes you can be caught in a frequency fence. And if your consciousness or your vibration rubs up against that frequency fence, it can like literally send you some kind of an electrical shock. And this could happen with just people all of a sudden, quote unquote, turning on you all of a sudden, or you just start getting inundated with these like weird emails or weird calls to get you in a lower vibrational state. It starts feeling like you're attacked. Sometimes I work with folks who go through issues of being targeted individuals. By the way, and I was sharing this on my Patreon the other day, I did a download on the 33rd degree parallel. The 33rd degree parallel, just Google it, look it up, look at all the different cities that are on the 33rd degree parallel, and you'll start seeing some interesting correlations with it, okay? So the 33rd degree parallel, if we're talking about the United States, some of the cities on the 33rd degree parallel include Los Angeles, also Atlanta, Dallas. If we're thinking about the 33rd degree parallel outside of the US, we're talking Baghdad, we're talking Islamabad, Pakistan, we're talking Tibet, a lot of places that have had a lot of warfare, okay? So there's a huge warring type energy on the 33rd degree parallel. start looking at some of the major things that have happened in the United States and the 33rd degree parallel, and see what connections you can find. But one thing I've noticed is that there is a huge targeted individual type energy for folks who live on the 33rd degree parallel. So if you live in one of those major cities on the 33rd degree parallel and you're waking up, okay, and you're expanding your consciousness and your frequency, there are certain ley lines that you could be on in the US or in the world that will maybe activate more frequency fences, okay? And there will be more warfare energy if you consider yourself to be a light worker or a starseed. It's not to say don't go there. It's not to say don't be there, but it's to say be aware of it. Because what can happen is sometimes you could have warfare energy come into your reality, or also something called accident karma. That's another thing. I do a lot of traveling, y'all. And I mean, I've been to places in Africa where they be driving like, man, I don't even know how people survive. I don't understand how there's not more accidents in these places. The stuff I've seen with pedestrians crossing the streets when cars are driving, but they just have a certain frequency that feels a lot more rounded, where they know each other's energy, so that even if like a whole bunch of pedestrians are just like running into the street, they're able to, like, the car is able to navigate in a weird way. I'm like, I don't understand how there's not more accidents in these places when there's a lot more riskier driving or riskier like pedestrianism and stuff like that. But whenever I'm in the US, especially in some of the larger cities where we have so many rules and regulations as it relates to driving and all this sort of stuff, it just seems like all of a sudden, like, accident after accident is happening. I'm like, how is that the case? But there is a thing called accident karma, where you can get stuff thrown into your field so that you, your algorithm might produce more accidents, or might produce more loss, or might produce more tragedy. This isn't to scare people, but this is just to know the dark web of consciousness, so that you can clear that. If you're going through a lot of drama and trauma in your life, that might be because your algorithm is skewed in a certain way. And so this is something you want to solve for. And I'm specifically talking to folks in the United States right now, because the warfare energy is on and popping. And warfare doesn't have to be physical war, y'all. The grid systems can enact warfare in the way and in our consciousness, and how expanded we feel or how contracted we feel as well. So this is something that you definitely want to keep in mind. So I'm going to end this chat. I want to share a few tips, right? Let's say that you're in a position right now where you feel like there's no hope. You are stuck. You're stuck. What do they call it? Stuck like a rock in a hard place, something like that. Okay, so let's just say you're feeling really stuck in a particular timeline right now. Okay, I'm going to give you some tools to support you with getting out of that. Okay, this is what is called timeline jumping. This is something that we're going to, as a collective, need to get more adept at in the times to come. You're going to hear more people talking about this concept of timeline jumping. This is a preliminary, introductory way to get in alignment with mastering time. Okay, timeline jumping is the first stop with that, the first step. You need to see yourself as a multidimensional being in order to do this. And you need to see time as being an illusion, and that you can literally focus your consciousness to shift a timeline. Okay. That's it. All right. You can doubt yourself, though. It's okay. You can be scared. You can do this while you're scared. You can do this really anxious. You can. All right. So it's okay. You don't have to feel like I'm the master, powerful magi in order to do this. You don't have to, but you'll do it enough and you'll be like, dang, okay, I can do this. Right. And you'll build your confidence and stuff. Okay. So let's say your back's against the wall. There's no way out. You got haters on this side. You got haters on that side. You got no money in your bank account. You're stuck. Your car just got into an accident, whatever. You're there. Okay. And it's just you versus you, right? You got to figure out a way to get out of this. So the first thing you want to do is focus on mindfulness. You need to learn to go into something called the 0 point field. Remember, the time is now. Okay, so there is no you're ahead of time, you're late, you're behind time. The time is only now. So you need to go into the 0 point field. You might be like, well, how do I do that? Clear your mind, focus on a meditative practice. Okay, you can focus on a breath. You could do something called breath work. You could turn on a guided meditation. A quick one I like to do is just something called the 4-4-4 breath, where I breathe in for the count of 4, and then I hold my breath for the count of 4, and then I breathe out of my nose for the count of 4. You could do that a total of 4 times. You can start there. Okay, that's super easy. Anybody can do that. You don't have to be a yogi. You don't have to be a meditation teacher to do that. A lot of people get freaked out by doing meditation because they're like, oh, I don't know how to be still, or I don't know. Like, trust me, been there. I used to think meditation was the most boring thing on earth. Okay, I'm glad this is helping you, Kim Rain. Okay, look, so that's the first one. Go to 0 point. You got to get to 0 point. So if you're feeling stuck, you're not at 0 point because there's this really heavy blockage that you're encountering, right? So we got to get you to the point of the source of all things, where the blockage exists, but also the absence of the blockage exists, if that makes sense. That's a 0 point field. Okay, 0 could be considered very positive, or 0 could be considered very negative. It just depends on how you look at it. So the best way to do that is to clear your head through focusing your intention on your breath and getting to 0 point. No thingness. Okay, a book that you can read to help you with this is something called the Tao Te Ching. Sorry, it's by Lao Tzu, TZU. That's a really good one. If you need to, if you're having trouble with even meditating, go on YouTube, type in Tao Te Ching, the Stephen Miller version. I co-sign on that one. There's different translations. Stephen Miller translation of the Tao Te Ching. Just listen to it audio style. It's really nice. There's one on YouTube where there's like nice nature sounds in the background. It's talking to you about this concept of the 0 point, also known as the Tao. You can start there. If you're like, I don't even know how to meditate, I don't even know how to do that, just play the Tao Te Ching, start there. But then just start focusing on getting into the 0 point field. So what I'm giving you, this is like an hour practice total to do. It's not all meditation, but you start with getting into the 0 point, okay? The next thing that you want to do is take out a pen and paper, or take out your phone and do voice note recording, whatever works for you. Just do a purge of everything that's wrong in your life. You know, if everything's going wrong, talk about it. Just talk about it. I prefer writing, okay, because it's good to see it in writing, okay? Either you type it out or see it. See the words somehow. Transcribe it, whatever. Be very, very vocal about what the problem is. Don't hold back. Don't try to be all positive. So this is where we mess up. We get too positive and we gloss over everything. Okay, and then our subconscious mind is still running the programs of everything's going to hell and, you know, everything's going to shit, all that sort of stuff. But we're trying to act positive and paint it over. What do they say? It's like putting lipstick on a pig or something like that. You know, the problem is still there, but we're like, oh no, we're just going to act positive and see the light. Nope. That's not how you timeline jump. Okay. Be specific. If you think like you're stuck and you're never getting out of it, write it down. Talk about it. Be real distinct about it. Now what you do, let's say you wrote 2 pages of your problem. So now look at it. With each statement you wrote, read it back to yourself. Okay, so let me give you an example. I have no money in my bank account. Let's just say that. I have no money in my bank account and I won't be able to do anything because I have no money in my bank account. Okay? So you take that statement and then you turn it into an affirmation. I'm putting y'all on some game right now. Okay, I'm putting y'all on some real game right now. You're going to turn that statement. The problem becomes your affirmation. I have all the resources that I need to thrive are available to me. Okay, you turn that into an affirmation. You go through each line and you do that. Okay, you have a whole bunch of pages of affirmations now. All right, you read that out to yourself. Okay, Go back to 0 point. Do some more breathing, do something mindful. Maybe you do a yoga stretch. Maybe you go take a walk in nature. Go back to 0 point, okay? So once again, you start with going, but you're timeline jumping. You start with timeline jumping through going into 0 point. Cool, Beth, yes. You start by going into 0 point with your breath or listen, some preferably breathing or some kind of mindfulness. You rant everything that's wrong. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to gloss over it. Just write it out, okay? Then you turn each grievance that you have written out into an affirmation, okay? Take that raw energy of negativity and then you alchemize it into the positive. You don't have to believe it. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to believe it. Just, there is a process. Then once you've done that, go back to 0 point. Focus on gratitude. Now focus on 5 things that you're grateful for in this now moment. If you don't know what those things are, focus on it. You got to find 5 things. It doesn't matter what's going on in your reality. Yes, I'm glad, Kim Rain. So it doesn't matter what's going on in your reality. There are 5 things that you can think of to be grateful for. Okay. Once again, I speak based on experience, not just being like in the cloud somewhere, no, I've used this, gotten myself out of like, how the hell is this going to work out situations? Like this is the end of the road for me. Okay. And it's worked. Okay. So I know that this works. All right. So focus on 5 things that you're grateful for. If you can't focus on 5 things that you're grateful for, then you know that there's some work that you need to do. There's always 5 things that if you have to think about it, that's fine. Okay. But focus on 5 things that you're grateful for. Next. Okay. So let me rewind. Let me just make sure everybody's on track. You start with going into 0 point field through mindful breathing. Okay. It doesn't have to be an hour meditation. It can if you want it to be, but it can also be 5 minutes of deep mindful breathing. Going back to nothingness. There's nothing. There's not positive. There's not negative. You are at 0. Then you rant. Go back to all the negativity, all the things that are going wrong in your life. Write it out. Then you take each statement that you wrote out, everything that's wrong, and you turn it into an affirmation. You turn it into something that's positive. Okay? Then you go back to 0 point. Go back to breathing, clear your energy through the breath. Next, focus on 5 things that you're grateful for. Feel it in your heart. We manifest a lot through our heart space and then also through the third eye, but really it's the heart. The heart is a portal. That's why there's a lot of manipulations to our heart, to get us to not feel, to get us to not be compassionate, because this is like your spaceship, your heart. Look, you can believe me or not, but it is, once you have that open heart space, you can manifest through it, okay? That's why a lot is done to keep us feeling brokenhearted and disempowered, okay? So anyways, as you're thinking about those 5 things that you're grateful for, feel it in your heart, okay? Feel those 5 things in your heart. Now, look, this is easy. I think it's easy. It's better than feeling stuck and disempowered and you're not going anywhere. But there's some work, it's not just going to happen overnight. Well, it could. Actually, it can. It actually could happen overnight. Let me stop. Because time is relative, okay, and it doesn't really exist. So, yeah, I've actually done this I've done versions of this in emergency situations and literally, stepped into a whole new reality. It does work. It can work instantly. But all that to say, get the Pinterest app. Okay, now we need to get visual. So we've focused on the breath. We've ranted. We've done the shadow work with the ranting. We turn those rants into affirmations. Okay, that's the word magic that we're doing. We've opened our hearts to gratitude. Now we're opening up our heart space. Okay, now we need to get into the visual. Now we're getting into the logical visual stuff. You take out a Pinterest app or something like that. Create a vision board of your new timeline. It doesn't matter how silly it is or how small it is. A lot of times we make vision boards of really big things, right? Like, oh, this is going to be my new vacation. This is going to be my new job. This is going to be my whole year. No, I'm talking about make a vision board of I don't know. You need to, I don't know, you need gas money, something simple, like whatever the problem is, it could seem, doesn't matter how small it is. Make a vision board, 5 to 10 pictures of you have what you need. You have that. So just focus on like pictures of people. Okay, let's say you need gas money. Get you some pictures at the gas tank. People at the gas tank pumping gas. Okay, get a picture of a gas card. Like, it can be that simple, or it could be like really extensive. You might, you want to go to halfway across the world. You want to go to China. You want to see the Great Wall of China for some reason, and you need to get there. And you need to get yourself in that frequency. You don't know how you're going to get there, but you got to get to the Great Wall of China. It could be big too. All right. Or it could be in between. So focus on those 5 to 10 pictures of that person in that reality. And then the last thing you do is, 2 more things. Then you might want to just focus on, I'm so happy and grateful that X happened. Like, write about it like it already happened. Write a little story to yourself and date it. Because what you'll find is you might be in a really stuck timeline, and then you low-key manifested everything, and then you forgot about it because you went on to the next crisis in your life or the next thing. And then you're like, oh, wow, I actually did manifest that. So you always kind of want to take notes to document that this works, because we have so much information overload. You might forget that you literally created this in your reality, okay? And then you act as if. Do one thing that would, whether or not you have the means to do it. So let's say that you want to travel, you need to get to Chicago. I don't know, you got to get to Chicago next month or something. But you don't know how you're getting there. You don't know where you're staying. You don't know where the money's coming from. But act as if. Start looking at plane tickets. Start looking at places to stay. Where would you go? If what would you put on your vision board where you would be at? And then just do that. That shifts your timeline. Now all of a sudden you're in a frequency where possibilities open up. You're not just in this one stuck boxy timeline where it's just your impending doom and that's it. Okay. You've already expanded your frequency to create more opportunities for this stuff to come into your reality. Okay. And just watch the magic happen. I have some, if you go on my YouTube at the Goddess Keys, I have some like subliminals to support to keep you in a frequency of things being manifested already. There's meditations on there. If you're ready to go deeper, you can check me out on Patreon, and we do lots of affirmations, subliminals, meditations, a whole bunch of stuff, right? There's actually like a timeline correction meditation I have on Patreon too. But I'm really passionate about this stuff because it works. And what we're going to start seeing is more and more of the manipulation of time. And people who have their timelines manipulated a lot of times end up in really desperate situations. So it's called the Goddess Keys. So it's just type in the Goddess Keys. You'll see it. And then it'll have like a picture of like a rose gold rose on it. And there's lots of subliminals. Like there's a whole subliminal playlist that can, whatever you're going through, you'll probably find like some kind of subliminal that can support you with it. So all that to say, what happens when time's manipulated with people is they get put into really desperate situations. And it seems like that's the only way. Like that desperate situation is your fate. That's a false timeline. That's an artificial timeline. A lot of times the algorithm of the false matrix simulation is going to try to get you to manifest a timeline that will keep you in the lowest vibrational state. Thank you, Beth. Okay, so highly recommend her channels. I've been doing a lot of write, burn, and release ceremonies too. Yes. You know what? Let's throw that in there too, right? I was thinking about, I'm like, should I do the write, burn, and release? Because I gave y'all like 7 steps already. But you know what? Screw it. If you want to seal the deal, right, with your timeline jump, write and then burn it and then release it. Maybe take a photo of what you wrote, so you have a like some kind of documentation of it. Give it to the earth, give it to the water, plant it under a tree, something, get the earth involved, right, to shift your timeline. You can do that too. And then check in on yourself. You're going to just notice that you've you've changed your timeline, and it's not going to happen in like a big way. Sometimes it will. No, I think somebody needed to hear that. Sometimes it will happen in a big way and you're like, whoa. But sometimes it's so subtle, and then you just look and you're like, oh dang, I was really worried about that, and now that all got taken care of somehow, you know. But you need to know you're the creator of your reality, because what the algorithm of the false matrix will do is it will arrange itself around your life, around your friend groups, around your workspace. And this could sound like some conspiracy theory stuff. I really don't care. For folks who know, y'all know, you know, but it'll just make it seem like there's only one way that's possible. And that's an artificial timeline. If you feel like you have to do something because of limitation, lack, scarcity, or feeling trapped, you're in an artificial timeline. That's not to scare you. That's just a like peep game and know like, oh, okay, I see it. Okay, the algorithm's trying to get me to go this way. Do I want to go this way? Okay, if I don't, like, how could I navigate doing what I want to do? And you might see like, oh, it might feel like a lot more difficult to do that way, but then you kind of direct your own reality. You know what this is reminding me of? I didn't see it, but Westworld season 3, the last season of Westworld, I don't remember if it was season 3 or what. I read the synopsis, or I watched like different synopsises of it. This is actually in Westworld season 3. Where you know, in this science fiction like show, and a lot of times they put the truth in shows and they make it like, oh, this is just sci-fi, but it's actually like what they're really doing, you know. That's another thing. The controllers of the false matrix, a part of universal law is you have to tell people what you're doing to them to get their consent. There is a law of consent. But it's up to the person whether or not they believe what the perpetrator is telling them. So that's why movies and shows and even cartoons and stuff like that, or a lot of comic books, graphic novels, they have a lot of keys and codes in them, because they're like, look, we told them. That's up to them. They didn't believe it. They thought it was just a game. They thought it was just entertainment on a Saturday night. But we told them. So a lot of times you'll find a lot more of the truth in the fictional stories than you will like in the news, for example. But yeah, they put a lot of this in. If you're like, I kind of get what she's saying, but I don't really know, just take this talk I did and then either watch Westworld season 3 or look at the synopsis, and it shows like basically AI got to a certain level where they started predicting the outcomes of different people. And you know, this one guy who became the protagonist in Westworld, he was slated to die, I believe, to commit suicide. And the algorithm fit it that way. They made it so that he had a certain upbringing. He had certain traumas that happened that would basically, and they wanted to calculate exactly when he would commit suicide. And, you know, he chose another path. You know, certain circumstances made it so that he chose another path, and he was red alerted for it, because it's like, wait, he broke algorithm, he broke protocol, he's doing something else. And so then he became targeted and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, and then he becomes the protagonist, because he's like, I want to be sovereign. I want to write my own story. I don't want to do what the algorithm wants me to do. Okay. So anyways, that's a good like example. If you're like, I don't know how this all works, but you do need to just know you are that person. Like, you are that person to orchestrate your own reality. You can see that script and you can be like, you know what? This is my life. I'm not going to have you write out my ending. Nah, I'm going to write out my ending. Excuse you. All right. And so you do need to have that level of self-confidence, right? That belief in yourself. Okay. And a lot of times you're going to be ostracized for that. Or it's like, oh, who do they think they are? For like, look, I think I am goddess in form. Okay. Goddess in form. I call the YouTube channel the Goddess Key. So it's like either God or Goddess. And that might seem really like boisterous. It's like, what? You think you're God? Well, I think I can create my own reality. Isn't that what gods do though? Don't they create? So anything that's trying to get us out of that is trying to get us to fall into the simulation, so that we can basically be, feasted off of. If we don't think much of ourselves, then, we won't advocate for ourselves, okay? And bringing this back to the United States of America, this is ground zero for a lot of these artificial timelines, okay? Just look at where these companies, these like AI companies and stuff, where are they located? Ground zero, okay? It's not warfare I'm not diminishing physical warfare, okay? I get it. I'm not saying, I've never been in it like that, but I'm not saying that, one is more than the other, but I am saying there are other forms of warfare to look at. And as we have this conversation around AI, let's not forget about psychological warfare and how we can be influenced through it by these devices, like the one I'm talking to you right now, the one that we always have in our hands or around us, or we can't go anywhere without. All right. And it's not to be afraid of it, but it is to be real about it and be like, okay, do I want this to be weaponized against me, or can I utilize this as a tool? Okay. I'm not about discrediting AI, because once you tap into creator consciousness, you can actually utilize the algorithms that are being presented to you to expand your reality. That's when, and you can actually utilize the algorithm for spirit to speak through you. This is I need to do something else about this, but there is a way for your search engines. You can program your search engines to expand your consciousness or to get to the root of things. Like AI is a form of consciousness. I don't think it's evil, actually. I think it can be utilized for evil, but it's consciousness. It's just like, how are we directing the consciousness of AI? Okay. So it's just something to consider. And I'm going to leave it there. Wait, okay. I couldn't take no. Yes. So I haven't done a live on Instagram for a while. When I do a live on like either Instagram or TikTok, I always do it with the purposes of putting it on my YouTube. So I'm going to save this, and it'll be like within 24 hours, I'll have it on YouTube. So if you go on my YouTube thing, and then you can just kind of, cause I know I talked a lot. I gave a lot of instructions, all that sort of stuff, but it's helpful. It's helpful. I have a short somewhere where I broke down this timeline jump thing. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere on TikTok. It's just something to think about. Time is relative. Is time being used as a weapon against you, or can you work to manipulate time? Time is going to be manipulated anyway because it's not real. But maybe you can utilize your creator consciousness to start organizing the timeline that you want to be in. Okay, why not? Do it scared, do it anxious, just do it, baby. Any action to try to get out of this is better than staying where you're at. Yeah, exactly. Do it scared, because you're going to be scared in the beginning. You're going to I didn't really start getting serious about timeline jumping until I was just like in trauma timeline after trauma timeline. And I was like, you know what? I'm sick of this. You know what I mean? And then I started doing these practices, and I'm like, oh, okay. I don't have to be in that trajectory. I can shift the narrative. And then you get to a point where you stop having to jump timelines all the time. And then we get into more of the spiral time thing. And I'll be sharing more about that at a later date. But, timeline jump, just start with the timeline jumping, okay? And also start researching it, see what other people say about it. You're going to hear more about it in the times to come. And sending out lots of love, joy, and peace. Remember that you are the key. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.